Punks are smoldering all around us. Come on, jump aboard. It's about to get lit on the Lou Reed bandwagon. Lou Reed was going through a rough patch as 1977 arrived. He was embarrassed that his first album for Arista Records, Rock and Roll Heart, landed with such a thud in November 1976. Lou had been anxious to prove that he was more than just a rock and roll freak show, that there was depth to his musical talent. And he really believed he could deliver the hit material Clive Davis wanted to broaden Lou's audience. Instead, Reed was feeling like a has-been. Not only had Rock and Roll Heart completely missed the mainstream target he was shooting for, it alienated a lot of the base that had been celebrating Lou as an underground deity. Lou had become a huge deal in the burgeoning New York punk scene, thanks in large part to his feature appearance in the first issue of Punk magazine in January 1976. That cover drawing of Lou as Frankenstein's monster became an iconic symbol of the movement, and Lou and Rachel Humphreys were the celebrity power couple everybody cheered when they entered one of the underground clubs in the city. What Taylor and Travis are now at Arrowhead Stadium, Lou and Rachel were then at Max's Kansas City. Lou did have some detractors. Some of the more hardcore of the punks were skeptical about Lou's move into what they considered adult contemporary soft rock with Coney Island Baby. More of them became downright offended and angry over the lounge lizard jazz shit of Rock and Roll Heart. Lou found himself taking punches from all sides after that album. He was frustrated, and his long simmering depressive anxieties were starting to boil over. And then the worst thing that could have happened to him happened. Rachel, the love of his life, left him. For the entirety of their relationship, the couple had a fundamental disagreement over Rachel's gender identity. Lou steadfastly refused to accept Rachel as a woman, and Rachel could no longer live with that. It was a soul-crushing breakup, and Lou started flooding the gap in his heart with boatloads of whiskey and over-the-counter speed. It wasn't pretty, as many who were around him at the time have told us. As dark as things were getting for Lou, he still was able to hold himself together well enough to write a batch of songs and start planning his next album. And he had a brilliant whiskey and speed-fueled idea for it. Lou had become fascinated with an obscure recording technique that involved placing microphones in each ear of a strategically placed model of a human head. The purpose of binaural recording was to simulate the ambience a listener would hear and feel when standing in the middle of the room where the music was happening. Reed learned of a guy in Germany by the name of Manfred Schunk who had developed a modern system for recording binaurally. Lou had a few gigs booked in Germany that summer, and he contacted Schunk to set up his system at a couple venues to record for a live album. Lou would work his new songs into his set list for the tour that started in the spring and have them perfected by the time the band got to Germany. And Lou had another brilliant idea. He felt the time was right to embrace his status as punk forefather and show the crowd back home that the old man still had some piss and vinegar in the tank. So he had a plan for his band, the same guys he had been touring with for a while and who had recorded Rock and Roll Heart with him. Those same jazz-oriented, classically trained musicians. He instructed them to loosen up, get crazy, and be like the Ramones, who were killing it back home. To help reprogram his jazz guys to the ways of Joey and Johnny and Dee Dee, Lou hired Jeffrey Ross, a guitar player rooted in the New York underground, to show them the way. But Lou didn't stop there. He hired a trio of female background singers to add some depth to his sound. And he hired his old friend Richard Robinson to come along and produce the live album. And he gave Manfred Schunk a blank check to build all the custom mannequin heads he needed to make the best binaural recordings known to man. Lou came home from that tour in August dead broke. Nothing in his pockets except some binaurally recorded tapes of a couple of weirdly loose shows in Germany. He presented those to Clive Davis as his new live album, which Lou had titled I Wanna Be Black. But that wasn't much currency at all for Clive. "This stuff isn't ready for release," Clive told Lou. "It needs a lot of work. Get your ass into the studio and finish it." Clive gave Lou a slim budget and a tight deadline and told him to get to work stat. Oh, and Clive put one other demand to Lou. "This little riff you've been fooling around with," Clive said, "the thing you're calling street hassle? I like that. Make a song out of it. Maybe I could get a hit single out of it." Lou no longer had a working band. Almost everyone bolted at the end of the tour. Saxophonist Marty Fogel and bassist Bruce Yaw, trained in the ways of Herbie Hancock and Ornette Coleman, did not want to spend one more minute pretending to be Sid Vicious. All of them, Fogel and Yaw, Ross and the two Michaels, keyboard player Fonfara and drummer Sikorsky, were pissed about all the missed paydays. All were sick of having to deal with Lou's erratic outbursts of anger, which also sent Richard Robinson running for the door. So Lou booked himself some time at the record plant with not much to work with except a skeleton studio crew and a couple boxes of expertly crafted mannequin heads. He decided the only way he was going to pull this off was to recreate Schunk's binaural setup in studio and patch up the concert recordings with overdubs. That proved to be really difficult to pull off. Lou and record plant engineer Rod O'Brien could not figure out how to match up the binaural ambience of the live recordings, no matter how many mannequin heads they mic'd up. The overdubs always sounded like overdubs. But they had to come up with something, so Reed just went to work re-recording all his lead vocals and many of the guitar and piano parts that needed repair on the live tapes. He cashed in a favor from Genya Raven, who came in for a few days to record some fresh background vocals. Fonfara stopped in one day to help out. Lou enlisted a couple of studio staffers to play a few guitar and bass parts, and he bumped into Bruce Springsteen one day in an adjacent studio. Eventually, Lou emerged from the record plant in October with the laboratory experiment of an album titled Street Hassle, which Arista released in February 1978. And wouldn't you know it, Lou Reed found himself once again being heralded as the freaking punk-ass genius here to show us what rock and roll is really all about. For about the third time in 6 years, Lou Reed gave us his best album ever. This was the album, yet again, to make everybody forgive and forget the previous album, which was his worst album ever.